Good evening, everyone. This is your evening news recap, your nightly news podcast on all the news that I come across throughout the day, giving you my take as somebody who aspires to be a politician in the near future. Hopefully, all you guys are doing wonderful. Hopefully, all you guys are doing well. Today is September 10th, and it is Wednesday. It has been a very interesting day in the news world, as you can see by the title, and so many other things have happened today. Charlie Kirk is now dead. Um, which is very interesting. Um, Outside of that, there's been a lot of things going on, so we really have a lot to talk about. So hopefully, all you guys are doing wonderful. And let's get into the news. Before we get into that, though, if you're new here, please subscribe. We are on our way to 500 subscribers. Also, I just remembered that we hit 300 subscribers, which is so awesome. We're past it now. But thank you, everyone who has subscribed. It means the world to me. Thank you all so much for the support. It is so great that we have been able to get to 300 subscribers so far. That's so cool to me. Yeah, I believe we started, doing these videos a little after January. I think it was around like March of this year when we started doing the long form nightly news videos, and it's been great. I've loved every second of it. I really enjoy this, and I'm glad I have the opportunity to call it, my job, if you will. So thank you all for the support so much. Whether you're watching on Substack or whether you're watching on YouTube, all the support is greatly appreciated. It means the world to me. So thank you guys all so much. Outside of that, though, let's get into the news. And don't forget to subscribe if you're new. We're on our way to 500. Anyways, going into the Trump administration segment, as we do, Trump has ordered demonstrators to be removed from a restaurant when he was eating a dinner there. Trump went to dinner and faced protesters outside of the restaurant. They chanted, "Free DC, free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time." Very catchy. Trump walked over to them visibly upset before pointing and nodding as the protesters were removed from the area. Seconds later, he was heard saying, "Come on, let's go," as they cleared out the protesters with Palestinian flags. Others inside the restaurant were heard chanting "USA, USA." Code Pink, which is a feminist activist group who led this protest, which I think was very powerful. I saw the clips last night on TikTok, and it was, very, very good. I was a big fan of that protest overall. They used their free speech for one, but they spoke out on really a lot of the big issues going out in the world today. And those are great things to talk about. Free DC, free Palestine. The attack on both locations needs to end. Both of them are either illegal or god awful, like Gaza. The Gaza situation is a horrible situation. It is a genocide. We've talked about it on multiple occasions here, so we're not going to go fully into it, but it is a genocide that needs to be stopped. In other news, the takeover of DC is supposed to end this week. Here's what's happening. Trump's 30-day takeover of DC's police force is set to end on Thursday. I believe as soon as it ticks to Thursday tonight, it's done. Of the 11th of September. House Speaker Mike Johnson said he had no intention of extending the control. Trump on Tuesday called DC one of the safest cities in the country. He said, "Here I am standing in the middle of the street. I wouldn't have done this 3 months ago, 4 months ago. I certainly wouldn't have done this a year ago. This was one of the most unsafe cities in the country. Now it's as safe as there is in the country." I'm going to be honest, I don't think the National Guard and police presence is going to end. I hope so. I really do, but I just don't see that happening. There will be a shift in these troops, as we've heard throughout the past few weeks, where they said they were just going to shift them out before the 30-day mark. If they haven't done that already, I would not be surprised if that's what's happening. So they don't get the pay benefits and all that other stuff, and they just bring in another set. I genuinely think that that's what's going to happen. I don't see them, pulling all of the troops. Maybe will pull a little bit out of it, but I don't see them pulling all of these troops out of DC, just because Trump is Trump, and I think he wants to assert as much control and as much fear presence as possible, especially within the nation's capital. I guarantee you we will see a lower in military equipment, probably a lower in troops. But I don't think it's all going to go away. I think we will still see a troop presence within Washington, D.C. In other news, Russia has entered Polish airspace. This is really the big news from today. This all happened last night. There's a lot to talk about. So let's get into it. Russian drones have entered Polish airspace. Poland said a number of Russian drones entered the country's airspace during what may have been an attack on Wednesday, leading to the drones getting shot down. European leaders have commended this incident, and NATO has invoked Article 4, which allows Poland to make consultations and discuss the situation with partners. Russia claims that they were targeting Ukraine and not Poland, but didn't explain why the drones were in Polish airspace, which came from Belarus. Belarus claims this was because the drones lost their way and were supposed to go to Ukraine, but somehow ended up in Poland. I don't think this was intentional. I'm going to be completely honest, because I don't think Putin is, sorry, that dumb. Europe as a whole is on the rise, whether that be military or economically, and an entire situation between Russia and NATO would end very quickly, even if the U.S. doesn't get involved, and would not look great for Russia. We'll go over what my prediction would be for that conflict a little bit, because I find things like that fun to do. But we got a few more things to talk about before that. Countries like Poland specifically are countries that we should be watching in the coming years, because they are going to be coming quite strong. They're on the rise militarily, they're on the rise economically, and even Germany is the exact same way. So many countries throughout the world are going to see a rise, especially in Europe, in their strength. And I don't think Russia has the ability to combat that. In other news, lawmakers are calling for sanctions on Russia for attacking Poland. Senate Majority Leader John Thune has said that there is an intensified interest in passing sanctions against Russia. Thune told reporters there's a lot, I would say, of discussion around we need to move, our members are very interested. This is interesting, but I don't think it will happen. Trump has way too many links and connections to Russia to do anything like that, for one. And I don't think Putin would let him, for two, but also he's just not going to piss off Putin. I would love to see this happen, so I really hope they do try and make an effort to do this, but I don't think Trump would approve of it in any way at all. I'm going to be 100% honest. If he did, I would be so shocked. Yeah, I would genuinely be shocked. In other news, NATO has invoked Article 4 following Russian attacks. Poland has invoked Article 4 of NATO after they shot down Russian drones in their airspace. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte told reporters, "What is clear is that the violation last night is not an isolated incident. Whether it was intentional or not, it is absolutely reckless and absolutely dangerous." So, what does Article 4 do? This allows member countries to bring forward security concerns to the alliance for discussions. It states that the parties will consult together whenever, in the opinion of any of them, that territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any of the parties is threatened. Do I think war will come with this? No, absolutely not. I would like to think positively on that. I don't think a war is going to happen. As mentioned, Putin isn't that dumb. But as also mentioned, I'd like to share my scenario if it does happen, because I find things like this interesting, and it's all for fun, so don't take it seriously. This is all just kind of my predictions, if you will. If a war happens between NATO and Russia, we will likely see Russian allies like Belarus, Serbia, maybe Iran, North Korea, and possibly a few other ones. I don't think we'd see China get involved, which would be a huge win for NATO, for one. But also, I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I'll go over a little more why I think they might or might not in a little bit, but we're going to say they don't here. This would be a very short war, in my opinion. I'd say, a year and a half at the most. And once it ends, Russia would likely have a Western leadership put inside of it. That's a given, really. The Ukraine conflict would end, and they would likely join NATO. I don't know if Russia would join NATO. I think that would take a couple years before that happened. Russia would likely lose some portions that were not granted autonomy when the Soviet Union fell, like Chechnya and Dagestan, I believe that's how you say both, and then etc. There's a few more throughout the Russian countries. And after that, we'd probably see a huge shift in influence as well, especially for Russian influence, because they kind of contribute to that Asian Chinese block of influence, really. But China would lose that, which would be a huge shift in influence. Granted, I think China would hold on to a majority. That's one reason why I think China could possibly join the war if this happened. Um, just to keep Russia around. But I would be shocked also if they did their own invasion of Russia and created their own little Russian puppet state, maybe. I think China overall believes that they have enough influence to, not really need Russia. I don't think, Russia is very necessary, if you will, to China. I think China would be fine without Russia. And I think China probably knows that as well, which is why I think they might stay out of it. But, there's good arguments on both sides for why they could get into a thing like that. Overall, though, Russia would get their shit rocked, which could be good for them if Europe has more of a say in negotiations, which it likely would. But that's my opinion. This is all just a theory and for fun, so take it with a grain of salt. Hopefully that doesn't piss anyone off. I don't really think I have any Russian viewers, so I think I'm fine. But just keep in mind, it was all for fun. I think things like that are fun to think about. So yeah. In other news, Trump, in fact, did make comments on the Russian drones. Trump has made an interesting comment on the Russian drones over Poland. Once again, he took to Truth Social, writing, "What is with Russia and violating Poland's airspace with drones?" Here we go. He didn't say much here, which is unshocking due to his connections with Putin, but it is very interesting. I do wonder what he means by "here we go," because that really could mean a lot of things. Does it mean here we go into war? Here we go into peace negotiations? There are so many things that could mean. I don't think we're going to see military action. I'm trying to think on the positive, as mentioned, but I really just don't think it's possible. In all honesty, unless Putin has a death wish, nothing is really going to come out of this. He seems smart enough to know not to fight Europe. And if he isn't, maybe I'll finally get to visit Russian architecture one day. That's been a dream of mine for a very long time. I would love to go see Soviet architecture, but I don't think Putin is that dumb. Anyways, moving on into our other news segments, we have two topics here today. The first one being, the big one, the title of the video, Charlie Kirk has, been killed during an event in Utah. Earlier today, conservative podcaster and political activist Charlie Kirk was shot and killed at an event in Utah at Utah Valley University. Trump announced his death on Truth Social, writing, "The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in all of the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you." Kirk was 31 years old and leaves behind, of course, his wife and 2 kids, I believe. My full condolences to his family and friends. Nobody deserves to be killed by gun violence. It's a horrible thing that kills, thousands of Americans every year and shouldn't be the case. But with that being said, I have no sympathy at all for Kirk himself. On multiple occasions has he said that he would rather have gun violence in the United States than simply safer gun laws that would prevent that. Nobody deserves to die from gun violence. Nobody, absolutely nobody. Especially Charlie Kirk. But, I'm not going to offer sympathy for a man who believes that guns are more essential than people's lives. You're not going to get it from me because that's bullshit. A gun is not more important than somebody's life. Also, it's really interesting. I've thought a little bit about this, and I find it interesting that Trump was the one to announce his death. You think it would be like, maybe someone related to him, maybe a family member, maybe like a New York Times article, but it was Trump on Truth Social himself. Really interesting that also this happened, less than 24 hours after there was a letter released that's joked about Trump buying a woman from Epstein. But hey, that's just my little interesting thoughts on, the reasoning and the time frames of that. In other news, moving on to the final topic for tonight, we have some big news as no one's really talking about it since Charlie Kirk died. And, this is something important to bring notice too, if we're going to be talking about gun violence within the United States, as a school shooting has happened today in Colorado. At least 4 students today have been injured after a shooting in Evergreen, Colorado. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office confirmed that the students were being sent to the hospital. 3 students are in critical condition, and a fourth was transported with an unknown injury. Investigators believe that the suspect was among the injured students, but it isn't known, according to the sheriff. It isn't known completely, according to the sheriff's office spokesperson, Jackie Kelly. Kelly said, "I don't even know if the suspect is old enough to drive," meaning this could be likely a very young kid. My condolences to all the families. I wish all of these children a recovery. I really hope none of them pass from this, because no child deserves to die from gun violence. This is absolutely crazy, especially if it was a student who committed this. We have seen thousands of students committing school shootings throughout the history of gun laws and all of that throughout the United States. Which is not uncommon. It's not, which is an unfortunate thing to say, but it is the truth. But it also proves that it is way too easy for even children to get guns. I mean, it is way too easy for everyone in the United States to get a hold of a firearm, which should not be the case. We need safer gun laws within the United States. We need to make it harder for everyone to own a gun. Once again, that's coming from a registered hunter. I've spent my entire life around guns. I have shot many animals. I have spent many times hunting, many hours, many days, and I strongly believe that we need safer gun laws in place within the United States, because we need to protect people. We need to stop people from dying. We should not have thousands of people die because of guns in our country. We really shouldn't. So many other countries throughout the world never have issues like this. And for us, it is arguably a weekly thing, probably even more. And that needs to change. It really does. It is disgusting that for so long we have had to deal with children dying in schools. It genuinely is. With that being said, though, thank you everyone for watching today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed. As mentioned, it has definitely been an interesting one in the news world, and there's a lot to think about and a lot to talk about. So let me know your opinions down below if you're interested in that. But also outside of that, if you're new here, please subscribe. As mentioned, we are on our way to 500 subscribers, and all the support would be greatly appreciated. That would be really cool. So help me out. If you're on Substack, please also consider subscribing. All funds go to me. They help me pay for the things that I need to pay for in college, like food, like clothing, like all of that. But if not, you can always subscribe for free. I truly do appreciate all forms of support on this content. It means the world to me that so many of you continue to watch day after day, or continue to show support day after day. You guys are legendary. You guys are amazing. So stay goated, and have a good one.